in front of me on the screen. Thank you so much for joining in this happy occasion. I want to tell you just a little bit about the Regional Gem Award before we dive into our honoree today. The Regional Gem has been around for a number of years, and you can see pictures of who our regional winners have been on the SAC website, storysac.org. We alternate the award between Northern California and Southern California. On odd years, it's in Southern California, no comment. And on even years, it's in Northern California. So the committee, Marilyn McPhee and Tina Tomiyama, have put out another invitation for your nominees from Northern California for next year's Regional Gem Award. It's an award given to people who have served storytelling and stories for years, through organizations, through their storytelling themselves, through supporting stories and storytelling in all kinds of manners. And our awardee today, John St. Clair, certainly embodies that charge. So I want to have Marilyn introduce John, and then we'll do the presentation, and then you get to hear John tell stories.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, it's a real joy to be here, and it's a joy to work with Tina on the regional gems, because it gives us a chance to say some nice things about people who have done wonderful things for storytelling and storytellers in Southern California. I could tell you a lot about John, but I'll just add a couple of highlights. He had 35 years of teaching, and way more than that, of being married to a wonderful woman who has collaborated with him on many, many things. He is a leader, a treasurer, webmaster of Inland Valley Storytellers. He is the heart and soul of Inland Valley Storytellers, vice president of Global School Net Foundation. And he knows a lot about a lot of things that are involved with stories. But let me just cut to a couple of things that when it was suggested that John would be a good recipient for this award, many, many people said, oh, yes, oh, absolutely, yes, 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 yes. Now, we couldn't turn in 50 recommendations, but we did get some really nice ones. And I'd like to just read you some of the things that people said about him, including the first one is from our dear, dear Angela Lloyd, who really had her heart and soul into having this award be given to John. And what she said about him is, a gem has a number of points of light, individual beams or sparks that would be considered strengths by those who encountered the gem. John St. Clair. In John St. Clair, these points include a steady and genuine human being, one with learned and practiced skills and tools for communications, respect, collaboration, leadership, and friendship. I love that. And that is quite a tribute from Angela. Here's another. John St. Clair has been the unifying spirit of the Inland Valley Storytellers for most of his existence, but in addition, he has helped to keep the storytelling communities in Southern California in contact with each other and with the rest of the world. John's unique style, another one, bringing lesser-known folklore who mentors new and reluctant tellers into better versions of themselves. No one could possibly deserve this award more. And you notice a common thread in some of these things. John is a great storyteller, a wonderful organizer, a good tech guy, a great teacher, but more than that, every single person mentions that he is kind, compassionate, and encouraging and supportive for others. You can't be better than that. Yeah. So congratulations, John. Wow.
Well, we want to get thing as well. Maybe you can be on either side of John.
Yeah. Okay.
There we go. Are we on screen? Can they see us? So I'd like to present the actual certificate to John. It says, Storytelling Association of California presents the 2025 Regional Gem Award to John St. Clair in recognition of your many years of helping keep storytelling alive in the Inland Valley and beyond. As a storyteller, educator, swap leader, tech wizard, and tireless volunteer. The Storytelling Association of California is grateful for your passion in helping others find their voice And we are proud to present you with the 2025 Regional Gem Award, presented on April 26th, 2025 at the Southern California Story Swap Festival in Vista, California. Thank you so much. And now you get to hear John tell some stories.
Okay, give this to my wife.
That's appropriate.
And I don't know which mic you want to use.
I would rather use that.
Perfect. So I need to turn this one off. So this one off. Here, I'll take that.
Testing. Okay. I guess I wasn't expecting that. You got me all choked up before I tell my stories. I want to express my sincere thanks to the Storytelling Association of California for bestowing this honor upon me. I am very, very honored and humbled by this award. And I'd also like to thank the Inland Valley storytellers, and in particular, dear Angela Lloyd, for getting the ball rolling and nominating me for this award. I'm very, very thankful. So I was thrilled to hear that I had an hour to tell stories. Usually we're on tight time limits. And I was ecstatic that I had a chance to actually tell a number of stories and not be too worried about how long they went. And I don't usually stick to a theme, but there is a sort of a theme. I picked out 4 of my favorite stories, and I got them all from Dan Kedden. And 3 of them are folktales. I love folktales. And the other one is an original story by Dan that sounds like a folktale. And I have written permission from Dan to tell all this. So the first story I'm going to tell is a folktale from Japan, and it's called The Storyteller and the Samurai. Long ago, an old storyteller was making his way through the countryside. And the day had grown long and the sun was beginning to get lower in the west. And he felt a grumbling in his stomach, and his muscles and legs were getting tired. And he knew he needed to find a place to spend the night, and even more importantly, something to eat. Well, his prayers were soon answered, because the path he was on took him to a smaller path that led up to a dojo. It was a school of swordsmanship where young aspiring samurai would come to study under a master swordsman. And the tradition in those days was that if you were willing to fight a practice sword duel with one of the students, you would earn a free night stay and a free meal. So he left the main road and went up this little path. And just as he got to the door, he stopped and he thought, how in the world am I going to do a sword fight with a student of swordsmanship? I am old. I am tired. And he was about to turn around, and suddenly he got an idea, and he went up to the door and he knocked on the door. The door opened, and here was a tall, strong, young swordsman who said, "Grandpa, how can I help you?" And the storyteller said, "I would like to challenge the master swordsman of this dojo." "Oh, no, Grandpa, you don't want to do that. How about if you challenge a first-year student?" "No," said the storyteller. "I want to challenge the master swordsman." No, said the young man. "How about a second-year student?" "I insist," said the storyteller. "I challenge the master swordsman." "Okay, follow me." And so the young man led the storyteller into the dojo, into the big practice room where the aspiring samurai were practicing fighting. And the young man said, "Someone go get the master swordsman. He is being challenged to a duel." And everybody stopped what they were doing and they couldn't believe their eyes. Here's this old, feeble man challenging the master swordsman to a duel. They couldn't believe their eyes. And you see, the custom was when you did a practice swords fight with a student, it was done with wooden swords. But the master swordsman, if you challenged him to a duel, that would be done with swords of steel. And the loser was often injured and sometimes killed. They couldn't believe that this old man would challenge him. Well, it didn't take too long for the master swordsman to arrive, and he told one of the young men to get a sword and give it to the storyteller. Storyteller took it, he put it on the floor, and he stood and smiled. There was a moment of awkward silence. And then the master swordsman said, "Pick up your sword. I accept your duel. Let us begin." Well, the storyteller began, but not by picking up the sword. He started telling a story. Long, long ago, there was a majestic mountain, and at the foot of the mountain, there was a small village with a stream running through. And at the edge of that village, there was an old man who would get up early every morning, and he would go down to the stream, and he would talk to the fish and listen to the fish tell their stories of where they had been, what they had seen, and what stories they had heard. And then the old man would go up into the village and have tea with his friends and share what he had learned. While the storyteller was telling the story, the master swordsman lowered his sword and said, "I surrender, you have won the match." "What?" said the students. "What? How can that be? He didn't land a single blow. He didn't even pick up the sword. How could he have won?" And so the master swordsman smiled and he said to his students, "How many times have I told you the importance of staying in the present, of staying in the here and now? This man took me to a place far away and a time long ago. He could have slain me at will." And so it was. The old storyteller got a free meal and a free night stay at the dojo. Such is the power of a well-told story. Now, this next story is a folk tale from Russia, and it's called A Portrait for the Tsar. Long, long ago in Russia, in St. Petersburg, Russia to be exact, there lived a very, very talented painter. And this painter had been painting for a long time and had become known to be perhaps one of the best painters in all of Russia. He could paint anything. He could do portraits, he could do landscapes, he could do animals, he could do still life. He was very talented, but he was getting old and he decided to take on an apprentice for two reasons. One, he wanted someone young and strong that could lift and move the equipment, the paint and the easels, because he was getting old and didn't want to do that physical labor. And the other thing is he wanted to find an apprentice who had some inherent artistic skill that he could teach some of the techniques that he had developed over the years so they might live on after he was gone. And so it was, young Mikhail became the apprentice to the master painter. He was just 16 years old. He turned out to be a great apprentice. He didn't mind lifting and carrying things in the art studio. He also had some inherent talent, and he learned quickly. And within a couple of years, Mikhail was actually painting and selling some of his own stuff. Well, also in St. Petersburg, Russia at that time, lived the meanest, most cruel czar in the history of Russia. He was so mean. He was famous for giving impossible tasks for people to do, and then when they failed on the tasks, he would chop off their head, or worse yet, throw into the dungeon to die a slow and painful death. So one day, there was a knock at the art studio door. And Mikhail and the master painter lived upstairs. The studio is downstairs, all in one place. And Mikhail went to answer the door, and there was a messenger from the Tsar. He opened up a scroll and he said, "The Tsar of Russia demands the presence of the master painter at this address tomorrow at noon." He rolled it back up, handed it to Mikhail, and left. Now, Mikhail was excited. He thought, oh boy, the Tsar is going to commission him to do a portrait of him. That'll make him even more famous. But when he gave the scroll to the master painter and told him what it said, he was not happy at all. The master painter had heard all of these stories about impossible tasks and what the Tsar liked to do with the people who failed them. And he just shook his head, and Mikhail said, "Oh, you should be excited. This is an opportunity. Let me go with you. I can give you moral support." "No, said the old man. "You are much too young and impulsive. You might say something that would get us both killed on the spot. No, you stay here. I will go by myself." And so the next morning, the master painter got up and he walked from the art studio to the palace. He presented the scroll to the guard, who looked at it and gave it back to him and said, "You wait here. I'll get you when the Tsar is ready." Well, it turned out to be past noon. It was later in the afternoon when the guard came back and said, "The Tsar will see you now. Follow me." And so the master painter followed the guard. They went to the royal chamber, which was a long, narrow hallway with guards standing on both sides. At the end was a very ornate throne with the Tsar sitting on it. And the guard led the master painter to within about 10 feet of the Tsar and said, "Your Majesty, this is the painter that you have summoned before you." And then the guard turned and left. And the master painter said, "Your Majesty, I am honored and humbled by your request of my presence. What can I do for you?" And the Tsar said, "Well, I have heard that you are the greatest painter in all of Russia. Is that true?" And the master painter said, "Well, it is true I am a painter, but I am not a painting critic. I have no idea who the greatest painter in all of Russia is." And the Tsar said, "Good answer." And then the Tsar said, "I would like to commission you to do a painting for me of anything you like, but I want it to be the greatest painting you have ever done in your life. And I want this painting to take my breath away when I look at it. Do you think you can do that?" And the master painter said, "Yes, Your Majesty, I will certainly try to do that." "Oh, you better do more than try, because if you do not succeed, I am going to have your head chopped off. Now you have 6 weeks to complete this painting, but you can finish it before then and bring it to me whenever it is finished. And we shall see, I shall be the judge of this painting of yours, and you better hope it's the best painting you've ever done and that it takes my breath away." Thank you, said the master painter. "I will do that, I will do that." And then he turned and left. And on the way back to the art studio, he was worried because he'd heard all the stories and he didn't know what he could possibly paint that would succeed in saving his life. So when he got back to the art studio and told Mikhail what had happened, and Mikhail, forever the optimist, said, "Oh, yes, this is great. I know exactly what you should do. You should do a painting of a beautiful sky and a hawk in full flight with its wings spread out, looking like it's going to fly off the canvas at the viewer. That will take the Tsar's breath away." "You know what? That's a good idea. Go get the paints and the easels, set it up. I'll begin tomorrow morning." And so the next morning, bright and early, the master painter began painting. He started with the blue background sky, and then he started painting the bird, and it was a very large hawk, and it was definitely in full flight, and he did such a great job. It really did look like it was going to fly off the canvas right at you. And he was pleased. And he actually finished it in one day. And so he said, I think I will take it to him, maybe not tomorrow, let's let it sit. I'll take him the next day. And Mikhail said, let me go with you. I'll help carry it because it's kind of heavy. It's a big painting. And the master painter said, yeah, you can come as long as you agree not to say anything. Keep your mouth shut. I don't want you offending the Tsar by saying something stupid. I agree, said Mikhail. So they waited a day for the paint to dry a little bit. And then the next day, they covered it with a cloth covering, and Mikhail carried the painting, and they both went to the palace, told the guard that they were delivering a commissioned painting to the Tsar. The guard told them to wait there, he would come get them. They also told the guard to please set up an easel in the royal chamber so they could mount the painting on the easel for viewing. Well, it was almost the end of the day before the guard came back and told them they could come in. And so they did, and they got to the royal chamber, and sure enough, there was an easel, maybe 4 or 5 feet from the Tsar, and Mikhail went straight to it, put the painting on the easel, did not uncover it, and then stepped back, and the master painter said, Your Majesty, I have painted the greatest painting of my life. I hope it pleases you. I'll bet you do, said the Tsar. I can't see it now. Would someone unveil it? And so Mikhail went to the easel. He took the cover off. The Tsar gasped because it did look like that hawk was just going to fly off the canvas at him. But then, after he gasped, the master painter smiled because he knew he had succeeded. Mikhail smiled because he knew that his friend and mentor had succeeded. But then the Tsar's face started to change, and he started frowning. He said, I tire of this painting. Guard, take the old man to the dungeon. We will chop off his head tomorrow. No, said Mikhail. You can't do that. He did what you commissioned him to do. We all saw you gasp when you looked at that painting. We all saw you. You can't do that. Well, said the Tsar, who is this character in my royal chamber who dares tell me what I can and cannot do? And then the master painter said, oh, Your Majesty, please forgive him. That is Mikhail. He's my apprentice. He's young. He sometimes talks without thinking. Please forgive his outburst. And the Tsar said, oh, so this is your apprentice, is he? Well, young apprentice, you've had a little bit of time to think and calm down. Do you have anything else to say to me? And Mikhail was just seething with anger. And he said, you are the most evil man in the world. You are the son of the devil. Oh, said the Tsar, so you think I'm the son of the devil, do you? I see that waiting a little bit did not improve your manners. I want to see what kind of a painter you are. Your friend and mentor obviously didn't teach you manners. I wonder if he did a good job teaching you to be a painter. I'm going to commission you to do a portrait of my father as you see him. And I want you to do this. First, you have 6 weeks to get this painting done. But I suggest you bring it to me as soon as you have it done, because I'm not sure the old man can survive for 6 weeks in my dungeon. If I am pleased with your painting, you both go free. If I am not, you both get your heads chopped off. And Mikhail was just seething with anger. And the Tsar said, guard, take this insolent young man out of my presence. And the guard grabbed Mikhail and escorted him out of the royal chambers. And Mikhail, on the way back to the art studio, finally calmed down a little bit and got over his anger, and then he was scared. because he had seen the Tsar reject the most beautiful painting that the master painter had ever done. And it was done to the specifications of the Tsar, and it did what the Tsar asked, and he still did not accept it. So how in the world could he free his friend and mentor with the painting? And then he started thinking, and besides, I have never done a painting of evil. I'm supposed to paint the devil. I told the Tsar that I thought he was the son of the devil. I need some subjects. I need some evil faces to look at. I just don't usually think evil. And so he decided to go down to the wharf. You know, some rough characters hang out at the wharf. And he was walking towards this man that had a scar on his face and a scowl on his mouth. And as he got closer and closer, that just in the corner of one eye, there was just a twinkle of kindness, and it ruined the whole effect. So then he walked on, and he saw another man. This man had the most evil, glaring eyes he had ever seen, and he had a scar on the other side of the face, and had kind of a scowl on his face. But as he got closer, just in the corner of the mouth, there's a little bit of a smile, and it ruined the whole effect. So dejected, he went back to the art studio, and he could not sleep. He just could not sleep, trying to think of what he was going to do. Well, just as the sun rose and Mikhail was eating some breakfast, there was a knock at the door. And he went to open the door, and there was a tall, well-dressed man who said, "I hear you are searching for a subject to paint, and I am here to be that subject." Well, the man's laugh sent a chill down Mikhail's spine. And he looked at the man's eyes, and they were kind of evil looking. And he was smiling, but it was not a pleasant smile. And he thought, maybe this man will do it. So he invited him in. He got an easel and paints, had the man sit in a chair, and he spent the whole day painting, furiously. And at the end of the day, he was just about done. And the man said, "Can I take a look at the painting?" And Mikhail said, "Sure." So the man got up out of the chair. He went over in front of the easel, and he said, "Oh, you did a pretty good job, you did. But the eyes, they're just not quite evil enough." And he picked up a brush and did a few strokes, and he made the eyes look more evil. And Mikhail said, "Oh, I didn't know you were an artist." The man laughed. "I don't know I've ever been called an artist before, but I am sort of an artist of human souls." And that sent a chill down Mikhail's spine. And then the man said, "Listen, Mikhail, I know your task. I know that you are doing this painting for the Tsar, and I want to make a deal with you. If you agree to let me take this painting home, and I will fix it up so that it will free your friend and mentor and you as well. Are you willing to make a deal? It is going to involve a human soul." And this sent a shiver down Mikhail's spine, because at this point he felt he was dealing with the devil himself. And he knew it wasn't right to make a deal with the devil, but he didn't know what else he could do to save his friend and mentor. So he said, yes, I agree. Go ahead, take the painting. And so the man took the painting and left. Well, Mikhail, as soon as he was gone, dropped to his knees and prayed to God for forgiveness for making a deal with the devil, and prayed that somehow he could save his friend and mentor's life and his own as well. Well, that night, he could sleep. I mean, he hadn't slept the night before, so he slept soundly, and he was awakened by a loud knock at the door. And he opened the door, and there was the devil, well-dressed, and he was holding a frame, a painting frame that was covered with a cloth for protection. But the bottom of the frame showed, and Mikhail looked at that, And the devil said, "Oh, I see you noticed the gilded gold frame. Nice touch, isn't it? You can't be too good for the czar, right? Yeah, where I live, there was a former goldsmith, and I told him if he would make this frame for me, I'd give him 60 seconds of a cool breeze." And that sent another chill down Mikhail's spine. So then the devil said, "Listen, you must follow my instructions entirely if this is going to work. And it will work if you do it right. Do not look at this painting. Do not let anybody look at this painting except the czar. So you are going to go take this to the palace, tell the guard to set up an easel saying, and tell him you've brought this commissioned painting. Tell the guard also to have your friend and mentor, the master painter, brought up from the dungeon and be present for the unveiling." The czar will do that because he will think it's funny to see you fail. And then when you are asked by the guard to go to the royal chamber, you go straight to the easel, put the painting on the easel, do not uncover it, go straight over to your friend and mentor, take his hand and start walking out. And the czar is going to yell at you and say, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Come unveil the painting." And then you are to stop and you're to look straight at the czar and tell him that this painting is so great that the only person in the world worthy of unveiling it is the czar himself. And he's vain enough, he will do it. And then you are to continue slowly walking out and explain to your friend and mentor not to turn around, not to say anything, just slowly keep walking out, no matter what happens. So Mikhail said he could do that, and he repeated the instructions back. And so he went to the palace with the painting. When the guard came, he gave him the instructions to have the easel and the prisoner brought up. It was the end of the day, almost dark, when the guard came back to get him. And Mikhail went into the royal chambers. He did as he was told. He put the painting on the easel. He walked over to his friend and mentor, took his hand, and the czar yelled at him, "Stop, stop, come unveil the painting for me. What are you doing?" And then Mikhail told the czar that he alone was worthy of unveiling this painting. It was the greatest painting in the world. And then he whispered to his friend and mentor, "Let's keep walking out. Don't turn around no matter what happens." And so the czar, frustrated, jumped off the throne. He took the cover off and he let out the most blood-curdling scream ever heard on earth. And as soon as he started screaming, all of the guards froze in place. And the czar's close advisors came out from the side, and as soon as they looked at the painting, they dropped dead. But the czar kept screaming. And when Mikhail and the master painter got outside, they could still hear the czar's screams outside the palace. That's how piercing the screams were. And they heard it all the way home. Mikhail explained to his friend and mentor what he had done. When they got home, they both dropped to their knees to thank God for their freedom and to pray for forgiveness for making a deal with the devil. And then they went to bed. The screaming continued all night until the first light of day appeared, and then it stopped. And then soon, word spread throughout St. Petersburg that the czar had died. And the general of the army, who never liked the czar much anyway, sent word to Siberia, where the czar's brother was imprisoned, and told to bring him, and he would be the successor, and hopefully a better one than his older brother. And people in St. Petersburg were joyous of the news that the czar was dead. There was a knock at the door. And Mikhail opened the door, and there was the devil, well dressed as usual. And he, in one hand, he was holding a painting that had been rolled up. In the other hand, he was holding the golden frame. And he said, "You can have this. It doesn't go with the decor where I live. I thought you might be able to use it." And so Mikael took the golden frame. And then he said, would you like to see the painting as I finished it up as? And they said, yes. And he unrolled it, and there was a painting of the Tsar sitting on his throne. It wasn't a picture of the Tsar's father. It was a painting of the Tsar himself sitting on the throne, engulfed in flames. And then he rolled it back up. And then Mikael said, I suppose it's time for me to complete my part of the deal. Do I need to go with you now? Silly, silly apprentice. You're much too kind. I wasn't after your soul. I was after the Tsar's soul, and I have it locked up in this painting. You already did your part. And then he turned and he left. And Mikael and the master painter both dropped to their knees and thanked God for their good fortune. A portrait for the Tsar. I will tell you later the backstory, but I don't want to use up my time because I want to get a few more stories done. Okay, so the next story is a folk tale from India. It's called The Witch of Kamalalaya. The village of Kamalalaya sits at the foot of the mighty Himalayan mountains. And in this village, long, long ago, there lived an old woman who the ignorant and superstitious people of the village called a witch. But she was not a witch. She didn't have any magical powers. But she did have more common sense and wisdom than the average person, and she knew the ways of healing using the local herbs. But the ignorant and superstitious people of the village were wary of her. And because of their taunts and slander, the old woman decided to move out of the village into the forest in a small cabin and live by herself. Now, most of the families in Kamalalaya kept sheep, and most of the boys in those families took care of their family's sheep. Kiernan was one such boy. His job was to take his family's sheep up into the hills to graze, and he was widely considered to be a conscientious shepherd. So one day, Kiernan took the sheep further up than usual, and it was a new place with lush green grass in a meadow with a stream running through it, and then on the other side there was cliffs. And Kiernan guided the sheep into that valley, and they started munching away contentedly. And he found a shady spot, sat down, and started playing his flute. Now, normally, after the sheep have had plenty of time to eat and drink, Kiernan would go around and count all the sheep in the flock to make sure they were there. And then he'd take his shepherd's staff and he'd pound it on the hard ground or on a rock as a signal that the sheep were to follow him. Well, this day, when he counted the sheep, one was missing. And he knew right away it was one of the silly little lambs that had been born only a couple of weeks earlier. So he searched and searched and searched. The stream was a border on one side and the cliffs were a border on the other side, but he could not find this lamb. So he decided dejectedly that he needed to get the rest of the flock back safely to the village and then maybe get some of his friends to come back and find the missing lamb. And that's what he did. He secured the sheep in the village and he talked to his friends, also young boys that took care of their sheep. They had already come back, and he explained the situation, and several of them came with him to search for the missing lamb. When they got to the meadow, they all searched and searched around, couldn't find it, and then one of the boys said, "Look up! Up on top of the cliff, there was the baby lamb, munching away contentedly on the yellow flowers that the sheep loved to eat." And so the boys started making all kinds of noise to no avail. The lamb paid no attention. It was oblivious to their noise making. It was just grazing away contentedly at the top of the cliff. And Kiernan began to cry because he knew how important the sheep were to his family's well-being. And besides, he loved all the sheep and especially the silly little lambs. And he knew if they did not get that lamb down off the cliff before nightfall, and it was out there exposed all night, it probably wouldn't live till the morning. It would probably be preyed on by a predator. Well, one of the boys said, I know, Kiernan, why don't you go to the old witch and ask her to use her magic to get the lamb down? That's a great idea, said Kiernan. Let's all go to the old witch's house and ask for her help. Oh, no, the other boy said. We don't want to be turned into a toad or a frog. We're not going anywhere near that old witch. It's your lamb, your problem. We're out of here. And they went back to the village. Well, Kiernan just didn't know what to do. And then he noticed the lamb had suddenly realized it was all by itself. There was nobody else around, and it started bleating pitifully. Well, Kiernan realized he had to do something quickly and decided to risk everything. He was going to go alone to the old witch's cabin and ask her to use her magic to help him. So he ran as fast as he could. He knocked on the door. The door was not totally secure, so it kind of opened part way. And he saw the old woman was asleep on the floor on a mat. And so then he yelled, Old Mother Witch, wake up, please. I need help. Please help me, Old Mother Witch. Well, that woke her up. But she was not pleased. She was not pleased with having her sleep disturbed, and she was not pleased with being called Old Mother Witch. In fact, she was quite angry. But when she saw this young boy with his tear-stained cheeks and worried look, the anger faded, and she said, how can I help you, my son? And so Kiernan explained the situation to her. And she said, and he said, please use your magic to help me get the lamb down. And she laughed and said, I don't have any magic, but I think I can help you. And she went and she got a rope and she put a noose at the one end of the rope, gave it to Kiernan, and then she got 3 pieces of cloth and gave that to Kiernan and said, take me to where you last saw the lamb. And so he led her to that meadow, and the lamb was still up at the top of the cliff, bleating pitifully. And so the old woman looked around. She walked up a little bit one way and then another way, and she said, well, it is clear to me that the lamb did not get up there from here. We've got to find out how the lamb got to the top of that cliff. And I think our best bet is to go this direction along the cliff. And so they did. And sure enough, they came to a partially hidden little path that went up the side, winding steeply up. And she said, let me have the rope and the cloth. You go up that path and see if you can see the lamb on top of the cliff. See if it takes you to the top. And if it does, come right back down. And so he did that. And sure enough, he could see the lamb. And then he came back down, and she gave him the rope and the cloth again and said, listen carefully. You're going to go up there and you're going to approach the lamb very calmly so as not to spook it. We don't want it to fall off the cliff. And when you get to the lamb, you're going to put the noose around its neck and tighten it and tie the other end of the rope around you. And then you're going to take the 3 pieces of cloth, and the first one you're going to use is a blindfold on the lamb. You're going to put it, cover the lamb's eyes, and then another piece of cloth, you're going to tie the 2 front legs together, and then tie the 2 back legs together with the 3rd piece of cloth. And then you're going to bend down and go under the lamb and lift it up on your shoulders with the feet hanging down in front of you. Then take the rope off of you and tie the lamb more securely to your body. and then go to the path. And this is the hard part, she said. You got to listen carefully. You are strong and you are brave, and you have to focus on the task at hand. Pay no attention to the lamb. It's not going to be happy being carried on your back. But blank that out and focus on good footholds and handholds to get safely down. And just remember, you are strong and brave and you can do this. And so Kieran remembered all of that she had said as he got to that scary spot at the top of the path. And he did exactly as she told him. He concentrated on the handholds and the footholds, and he got safely down. And when he got down, he bent down and she helped get the lamb off of his back. And they untied the lamb's feet and took the blindfold off, but kept the rope on. And she said, Kieran, you are so brave. You're as brave as any soldier on any battlefield ever. I am so proud of you. You did such a great job. Now let's get the lamb back. Now, by now it's totally dark. There was no light left. And so they started the long walk back to the village. And when they got to the edge of the village, all of the houses, the lights were off. People were already in bed. But not Kiernan's house. His mother was waiting up for him. The light was on there. And just as they got there, he turned to thank the old woman, and she was gone. She had slipped away. And so he put the lamb with the other sheep. He went inside and he told his mother everything that had happened, and how the old woman was not a witch. She didn't use any magic. She used her wisdom, and her encouragement helped him. Her advice and encouragement helped him rescue the lamb. And then he said, I am so ashamed of how we treated her when she lived in this village. She's no witch. She's a kind old woman with lots of knowledge and wisdom. I am just so ashamed. Well, the next day, word spread throughout the village about what had happened. And some of those villagers also felt ashamed. And so when Kieran said he wanted to go back to the old woman to return the rope and the pieces of cloth, a number of the villagers said they wanted to go with him to apologize to her. And so they all went into the forest, and he knocked on the door, and she opened it up, and Kieran said, I didn't get a chance to thank you. Thank you so much for helping me. Here's your rope and cloth back. And then the people behind him said, we apologize for how we treated you when you lived in the village, and would like to invite you to come back to live in the village. And Kieran's mother, who came along, said, you can stay in our house. We have an extra room. And the old woman was tired of living by herself, and so she accepted the invitation. And she moved in with Kieran, and she shared her knowledge with those villagers who were receptive, and many of them were. And through her teachings, she helped lead them away from the darkness of fear that leads to ignorance and superstition and hate, and toward the light of common sense, wisdom, and love. The Witch of Kamalandia. Okay, final story. And this one is the original story by Dan Kelly, which, as I said, I have permission to tell. And I think he got the idea for this story from the one I just told, and I'll let you draw your own conclusion. This one's called One Tear. Long, long ago, there was a boy who lived in a village. His job was to take the sheep up into the mountains to graze. He took his dog along with him, And the dog would help watch the sheep while the boy played a little stringed instrument and sang songs. You see, the boy loved listening to the old people in the village sing their songs in the village square. And so when he took the sheep into the mountains, he would practice playing and singing those village songs. Well, one day he went further into the hills than he had ever gone before. And he came to a beautiful valley with lush green grass. And with the help of the dog, he herded the sheep in there, and they began grazing contentedly. And then the boy thought, this is a new place, I want to explore. And he saw off to one side, there were cliffs on the east side of the valley, facing west. And he decided to go explore there first. And as he got closer to the cliffs, he noticed there was a big cave at the base of the cliffs. And when he got to the base of the cliffs, it was an enormous cave, over 30 feet tall at the entrance. And he decided to go in to see how big it was, because he thought, this is good to know. If a storm comes up quickly, I could bring the sheep in here to shelter a violent thunderstorm, if it's big enough. So he went inside, and he never found out where the end was, because it got totally dark. It went in seemingly forever. And he had gone far enough to know it was big enough to shelter the sheep. And so he turned around, came back out, and at the entrance to the cave, there was a large rock, just the right size for sitting on. And so the boy sat down with his back to the cave, facing out towards the valley. He could see the sheep grazing. And he got out his little string instrument, and he began to play and sing the village songs. And after a while, he decided he was getting hungry, so he put his instrument down on the ground, and he got out his lunch bag and was just about to begin eating when a voice came out of the cave. Play another one. Well, this startled the boy. He turned around. All he could see was darkness in the cave. He didn't know who was saying that, and it kind of scared him. So he put his lunch away, picked up his instrument, and he was about ready to leave when the voice spoke again. Please, please play another song. And this time it didn't sound so threatening. So the boy played and sang another song. And when he finished, the voice in the cave told a story. And when the voice finished with the story, it asked for another song. And so he played another song. And then the voice told another story. And they went back and forth for the rest of the day. He was able to eat his lunch while listening to the stories. And when it came time to go back, take the sheep back to the village, the voice in the cave said, will you come visit me again? And the boy said, yes, yes, of course. This was fun. And so he did. And every time he would take turns playing a song, singing a song, and listening to a story. The stories were wonderful. The stories about knights in shining armor, stories of valor and battle, stories of love, stories of sadness, stories of happiness, stories of promises kept and promises broken. Well, one day, the boy stayed longer than usual, and the sun was getting lower in the sky in the west. And the sun's rays began to creep into that west-facing cave so the boy could see who was telling the stories. First, the sun glistened on the razor-sharp claws, and then it illuminated the tree trunk-sized legs, and then it lit up the green, scaly body with leathery wings folded up on the side, and then the long serpent neck with a head on the top, two little horns, and smoke coming out of the nostrils. The boy was looking at a dragon. And the dragon had started a story about his own life. And it was getting sadder and sadder as he told it. The dragon had his eyes closed, and he started crying because he was telling the story about how he was so lonely. All of his kind were gone. And he was living by himself in this cold, dark cave, and he was afraid of dying there by himself. And so the boy walked into the cave, and just as the dragon finished the sad story about his life, the boy put a hand on one leg to comfort him. And the dragon's eyes shot open, and he said, "Aren't you afraid of me?" "No," said the boy, "I'm not afraid of you. Don't you know I could tear you to pieces with my sharp claws?" The boy giggled. "Don't you know I could burn you to a crisp with my fiery breath?" The boy laughed. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" "I can't be afraid of you," said the boy. "I know your story." And the dragon smiled a toothy smile. And then he said, "Now that you know I'm a dragon, will you still come back to visit me?" "Of course," said the boy. And he did. And one day, they stopped for a moment, and the boy said to the dragon, "You know, you don't need to live in this cold, dark cave by yourself. Why don't you come to the village and live with me?" "Oh, no, 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 no," said the dragon. "My people and yours have been fighting and killing each other for thousands of years. If I came to your village, your men would grab their swords and their bows and arrows and their spears and attack me. No, 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 never work." "Well," said the boy, "I'm going to figure out a way to make it work." Well, a couple days later, the boy was in the village square listening to the old people sing the village songs. And in between songs, he overheard a conversation. One of the singers said to the other, "Isn't it sad how nobody ever comes to listen to our singing anymore?" "Yes," said the other singer, "it is so sad. They all go to that village down by the river. They never come up here to listen to us." And the boy got an idea. And he ran to the mayor's house and knocked on the door. And the mayor opened the door and said, "What do you want?" "Is it true," said the boy, "that nobody ever comes to visit our village anymore?" "Yes," said the mayor, "it's true. Nobody comes visit us. They all go to that village down by the river." "Well," said the boy, "I know a way to get people to come here again." "You do?" said the mayor. "How?" And the boy said, "I know the greatest storyteller in the world. He can get people to come to this village." "That's wonderful," said the mayor. "Tell the storyteller to come and tell me some stories." "No, no, no," said the boy, "it won't work. See, this storyteller is a little bit shy. And until he gets to know you, I think it'd be better if you went to his place to hear the stories." "A shy storyteller," said the. And then the boy said, and when we get close to where he lives, I'm gonna have to put a blindfold on because he's very self-conscious about how he looks, but until he gets to know you, and then he's fine." A blindfold, a shy storyteller who's self-conscious about how he looks, doesn't sound like any storyteller I've ever heard of. But if it's a chance to bring people back to the village, we'll try it. And so the mayor got some of the council members to go with him the next day, and the boy took them to that meadow. And when we got to the meadow, but before they got to the cave, the boy put blindfolds on them, had them hold hands, walk single file to the cave. He had them sit in a semicircle, leaving half the circle open for the dragon, who could easily fill half the circle. And the boy sat on one side of the dragon, the mayor on the other, and the dragon started telling stories. And they were wonderful stories. Stories of valor that boiled their blood. Stories of love that melted their hearts. Sad stories that made them cry. Happy stories that made them laugh. And finally, the dragon got to his own personal story. And as he got to the sad part of his story where he was so tired of living by himself, so lonely, and so afraid of dying by himself in that cold, dark cave, the dragon had his eyes closed and he was crying. And one of the tears landed on the mayor's hand. And that one tear caused the mayor to lift his blindfold. He thought maybe it was raining. It wasn't raining, but then he saw the dragon, who was still telling the story. And so he took his blindfold off. He went around to all the council members, took their blindfolds off, and motioned for them to be quiet. And then they all came up close to the dragon. And just as he finished his sad story, they all put a hand on his leg, which is all they could reach. And the dragon's eyes opened, And the mayor said, would you be willing to come to our village and be our official storyteller? Yes, yes, I would be very happy, said the dragon. I have a big favor to ask of you, said the mayor. Oh, anything, anything. What's the favor? Will you give us a ride back to the village? Of course, said the dragon, and he made himself as low as he could. The mayor and the boy and the council members climbed onto the back of the dragon, held onto his spine, and the dragon took off and started coming down out of the hills. First, he went over the farms, and the people working the field saw the dragon with all the people in the back, and they dropped their tools and started running to follow the dragon. And the dragon landed in the village square, and shortly after people started pouring into the village square to see what was going on, the mayor introduced the dragon as the new official storyteller, and he started telling stories. And they were wonderful stories, stories of promises kept and promises broken. And soon word spread about the dragon storytelling, and people did start coming to the village. And after a month or so, they were coming long distances to hear this dragon storyteller tell his stories. And so when the time finally came to be the end of the dragon's life, he didn't die all alone in that cold, dark cave. He died surrounded by friends, with his head resting next to a friend who, as a boy, had sang songs to the dragon. And so all of the fear and all of the hate had been washed away by that one tear and the power of story. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my stories.
This was unbelievable. This was fabulous. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to hear your stories and be able to acknowledge just a little bit of how great we are in our lives.
Well, thank you. I'm so honored to be able to share my stories.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody.